So,
Good evening, Farmington Hills. Welcome to our regular city council meeting of February 27th, 2023. I want to welcome everybody here, and we will begin as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you don't mind, I would like to call up one of our new state senators in Farmington Hills, Rosemary Bayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Senator. I will see you in a few minutes when we get to public questions and comments. I can't wait to introduce you to the city at large. Next item is the roll call.
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Council Members Bridges,
here.
Bruce,
Here.
Knoll,
Here.
Massey,
Here.
Newland. Here. And I will note that Councilmember Bolaware is absent.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the regular session meeting agenda. Dr. Massey?
Madam Mayor, I would move approval of the agenda as published.
Support.
It's been moved by Dr. Massey, seconded by Councilmember Bridges to approve the agenda as printed. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it passes unanimously. Next item is the introduction of LaToya Harvey, our Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and in the Employee Development Department. And I will call her up, and we have Tom Shirtliff of our MCMR who is here, and he would like to say a few words as well after you're done.
Good evening, everyone. My name is LaToya Harvey, and I am very excited to be here. I started last week, so looking forward to working with council and the entire Farmington Hills workforce and our community to definitely move forward in our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
It's been a year in the works, and we're very glad to finally have someone in this position of your quality. We're very excited.
Thank
you. Mr. Shirtliff, would you like to say a few things? Yeah. You sure?
Yeah, I don't have anything. You have great work. Let's keep
Okay. Got it. Thanks. Okay. Next item on the agenda is Historic District Commission Report, 2022 Annual Report. You've had a busy year.
Yes, we have. You've looked at our report so far?
Yes, I did.
Okay. While we set up, my name is Marlene Toulis, and I'm the newly elected chair of the Historic District Commission. We have 7 members, and I'll go through them while we key up here. All right, I'm newly elected, and our former is Jim Paulson. We have Alec Thompson, who is our elected recording secretary. John Treffolet, one of our veterans. Ken Clemmer, who's the vice chair, he's here with us. Steve Olson. Lisa Martin, who has resigned. She was our recording secretary. Alex Thompson is our recording secretary. So we are 7 strong, but we're a little weaker because we've lost 1, so we are 6. We're looking for a candidate. If you know of someone who's interested, would like to join the commission, please let us know, and we'll carry with that. City of Farmington Hills Historic District is charged with preserving historic districts within the city that reflect the elements of the architectural, cultural, economic, political, or social history of the community. We work diligently, and we have worked diligently over the last year to further this goal, and the report is going to summarize our 2022 activities. I should also mention our council liaison, Valerie Knoll. Our city staff liaison is Chris Canty, who's on my right, and Eric Perdonik, who is our outgoing city planner. Our 2022 Historic District Commission goals, objectives, and initiatives. We work to assist the city's Special Services Department with continuing restoration work on the fieldstone wall at the Sherman Goodnow House. We work to assist the city's Special Services Department with the upcoming work on the Spicer House and to implement a comprehensive restoration plan for the site. We're continuing collaboration between the Historic District Commission and the city's Department of Public Works in implementing the cemetery preservation plan, including additional mounting, cleaning, resetting, and I should say repairing. Continuing to update the Blue Book, which is the city's official guide to its historic districts and available to anyone who wants one, for accuracy and comprehensiveness, and exploring the potential opportunity within the planning office to assist in such process. We will be working, we were planning to work on a comprehensive video and photo documentation of the Sarah Fisher property, since development may begin soon. I believe it's still just in stasis, shall we say. We are continuing to monitor the preservation status of the Botsford Inn and to work with the responsible parties to address various issues regarding the exterior of the structure. We've got we will complete study of the properties identified in a 2019 reconnaissance survey by contacting property owners, informing them of the benefits of historic designation, and continue to identify new sites for potential historic designation. Our 2023 goals, objectives, and initiatives. We will continue to assist the city's Special Services Department with continued restoration work on the fieldstone wall at the Sherman Goodnow House, assist the city's Special Services with upcoming work on the Spicer House, and implement a comprehensive restoration plan for the site. We'll continue collaboration between the Historic District Commission and the city's Department of Public Works in implementing the cemetery preservation plan, including additional monument cleaning, resetting, and repair. We're going to continue to update the Blue Book, the city's official guide to its historic district, plural, for accuracy and comprehensiveness. And we're going to complete the study of properties identified in the 2019 reconnaissance survey by contacting the property owners, informing them of the benefits of designation, and continue to identify new sites for potential historic designation, which we have begun to do with our mid-century modern. We had 10 regular meetings in 2022. Meetings in January and August were canceled due to lack of business. Certificates of appropriateness are granted for a project which meets the United States Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings as set forth in Title 636 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 67, as amended. We have 10 certificates of authenticity that we have issued, and we can begin. Yeah. Our first site is the Drake House. It's a 1830 house remodeled in 1938. Shortly after the house went on, they were looking for replacing a 6-foot-high wood privacy fence. They wanted to replace it with a vinyl fence 6 feet high. shortly after we issued the certificate, the house went on the market. So the fence was never taken down. It's probably up to the new owners to decide if they're going to do that. I believe, I haven't gone by it lately, but I would guess the house may still be up for sale. Okay. Next is our Spicer house. We have issued a provisional certificate of appropriateness. We are still working out all the details, but the point is they are removing the existing wood shingle roof and have offered a number of different options for replacement. We are looking ourselves at a synthetic shake roof, and we're looking for them to do some minor stucco repair and trim repairs, subject to the commission deciding on the final color of the roofing product. And the roofing product, I'm happy to say, is a recycled material and is recyclable. It's Brava tile. We're also looking at the existing ridge cap, which we were very concerned with because it's different colors, which lends itself to this English country style house very nicely. But that is not going to be able to be retained. Copper gutters, they need to be refurbished and retained, and new copper valleys being installed. Stucco work to the chimneys where needed. And if we can come to agreement on all this, then Spicer House should have a new roof and be protected for the next 50, let's see, it was built in 1926, so maybe the next 100 years. The next site is the Addie Emmett Greenhouse. It was built between 1854 and 56. It's likely called a Michigan farmhouse style. We approved their certificate of appropriateness. They were replacing vinyl windows with vinyl windows. Since construction, there have been extensive changes to the house, but it's still a lovely house. Next is the Botsford Inn. Oh, you didn't change the picture out. Okay. Botsford Inn had, 1924, Henry Ford restored the inn. In 2006, 2009, the house underwent extensive restoration and rehab work. But since that time, to the tune of several $1 million, but since that time, there's been little maintenance. It's in disrepair, and we have met with people from Beaumont, now WellCare Hospital, and I believe we've reached a point and certificate of appropriateness has been issued. We look forward to their work starting this year in the spring, and it should be, once again, a very good structure. Next, the Lemuel Botsford House, built in 1837, a Greek revival. It's had numerous additions to the structure. We approved a certificate of appropriateness for the replacement of their roof, their asphalt shingle roof, the gutters, wood and plastic shutters, with the shingle roof intended to simulate the wood shakes, new seamless aluminum gutters, and new wood shutters to include shuttered dogs. The Theron Murray House was constructed between 1833 and 1837. It's also a Greek revival. We approved a certificate of appropriateness for the installation of a generator in South Side Yard. And I bet they're happy about that. Kirby White House was built pre-1928. It's a Federalist revival. It was moved in 1993 to a mile about south of the original location. We issued a certificate for the removal of the existing asphalt shingle roof and the replacement with a charcoal laminate dimensional asphalt shingle roof. John Garfield House, built between 1831 and 1838, a Greek revival. They were also looking to install a generator in the side yard. We approved their certificate of appropriateness, and I'm sure they are also happy they have a generator. And our Bourne Halstead Cottage was built in 1830. It's had extensive remodeling, but they were applying to replace the asphalt shingle roof with a similar asphalt shingle roof. Their certificate of appropriateness was approved. Now, the activities in 2022 cover the cemetery master plan implementation, the historic survey, resource survey, Botsford Inn exterior restoration, and the Spicer House roof replacement. These were activities in 2022, but they are carrying forward into 2023. So our goals and our objectives and initiatives for 2023, you can, I think, nope. To assist the city's special services department with, yeah, I don't know if that's on there.
We already did that one.
With continued restoration work on the fieldstone wall at the Sherman Goodenough House. Assist the city's special services department with upcoming work on the Spicer House. It's all carrying over. Continue collaboration between the commission and the city's Department of Public Works in implementing the cemetery preservation plan, including additional monument cleaning and resetting. And I will emphasize repair because we've done the cleaning. Resetting, the smaller stones have been reset, but there are some large stones that need more than muscle, more like machinery, and the repair work. So just a plug, this commission needs money. Our budget needs to expand in order to carry on with this work. We will continue to update the Blue Book, and we will work on the properties identified in the 2019 reconnaissance level survey, and we will be working with the mid-century modern. We've identified 5 houses, 5 structures. We've had response from 4. So we're very happy about that, and that will be part of our work going forward. So I thank you.
Thank you.
And
Does the council have any questions, any comments?
Comment. Thank you. I want to say, Mrs. Tullis, right?
Toulis,
Tullis, I want to thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I appreciate the fact that you went through the certificates of appropriateness that the commission was involved in, and you gave a pretty concise history of each of those properties. It goes to the fact that the city has a rich heritage history here in Farmington Hills.
Definitely.
And these homes that you outline here outlines that history, so we appreciate that. How many years does it take for a home to be designated as historic?
Well, they have a 50-year timeline, shall we say. So anything prior to 1973
Yes.
would be considered historic.
Thank you. Well, I enjoyed
God, that includes my house.
I enjoyed your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
1963.
Valerie, did you have a question?
I just have a comment. So I just want to thank the Historic District Commission. All of the members are extremely knowledgeable. We're very fortunate in this city that we have people that step up to volunteer that have the knowledge, because this is a commission that you need people on it that are knowledgeable in the history of architecture and the history of our community. So they do a wonderful job. They work well together, and they have taken on additional projects. This is, I think, the second year that the cemetery project has been in the annual report, maybe third year. And so it just shows their motivation and ambition. They came up with the idea after touring the cemeteries, and they saw that they were in disrepair. These are city-owned properties. We, as a city, have an obligation to keep these cemeteries in good repair, out of respect to the many former Farmington residents that are buried there, many of them veterans too. And I think we need to remember that at budget time. So I'm gonna put in a plug for the budget, because in the past, their budget has been used primarily for two things. For historical markers, and usually that cost is shared between the resident that's applying for that historical marker and then the commission. As well as then they've often put on some historic educational programming, seminars. They did one on windows, how to take care of glass windows, historic glass windows. And for the most part, the budget has been sufficient for those type of events. But now they've gone a step in, they're really stepping it up. They've gone above and beyond. They get out there, they've gotten the Boy Scouts involved, they get out there in the cemeteries, they clean the markers themselves. On top of that, they've had to hire professionals to help repair many of these monuments, tombstones that are in disrepair, and it's expensive. So I'm gonna put in the plug that budget time is coming up. In May, we'll have our budget meetings, April-May timeframe. So we really need to think again about our commissions, particularly this one that's doing such important work. They are helping with the infrastructure, maintaining the infrastructure of the city. They're not just, no knock on seminars and making nice promotional videos and buying t-shirts. That's all well and good. But they're going above and beyond it by maintaining our infrastructure and our assets. So, and so I just want to thank them, and also the other Spicer House. Spicer House, I think you saw the photos in here. Look at the condition of this roof. The Spicer House has been in disrepair for a while, and basically this is the roof. We also need to have a conversation about the inside of the Spicer House. And the commission is actually working with a historic preservationist that is familiar with the Spicer House and can make recommendations on what needs to be done. And we are talking about our master plan right now. At some point, I think we need to have a conversation about the Spicer House too. It is a unique house. We do use it for city events. Residents can rent out the home. And so it does get traffic, not so much lately because it's been in disrepair and not many people are using it anymore. But we need to talk about, is that something we're going to continue? And if we are, we may need to figure out a way to invest in the interior of that home so that we can maintain the historical appropriateness of the house, but also make it function and relevant if we're going to use it, again, as a meeting place for city residents. So just something to put on maybe a future council study session.
Anyone else? Here. Mary Ellen?
I want to commend you for thinking about talking with mid-century modern. And that's probably an area that's been kind of not thought of at all. So everyone kind of knows, when you start working with a homeowner or property owner, and let's say you got, 10, what's the time frame for, or amount of time the commission has to work with a homeowner? Let's say when you're approaching one of these new owners.
Well, it's quite a process. Beyond that conversation and their interest, we want to educate them on just what it means to be designated. And then we go through the process of application to the State Historic Preservation Office with all the information the history, the specifics of the construction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it can take. Up to 2 years. Yeah, up to 2 years. And I think it's a worthwhile thing. It's not, we're not saying, hey, you have to do this. Oh, you can't do that. No, we don't. We just want to give them the recognition, designation. It's a wonderful thing, and it can lead to some funding, state funding, some tax work, tax refunding on specific work that they might do, and just the distinction of, hey, I live in a historic house.
Yeah. After all, the 90s is now considered vintage, so
Pardon?
the 1990s are now considered vintage.
Yeah.
I also want to thank you for all the work you did. I'd like to see a comprehensive budget. This is our 50th anniversary coming up, and the work that you and your commission have done to preserve the historic homes in our community are a great addition and showplaces for the history that we live with even today in the Farmington area. And it's funny, we were talking during a study session tonight about the Ferry Seed Company and the Kirby White House. Kirby White was one of the top executives of the Ferry Seed Company when it was the largest seed company in the country, based in Detroit. And this home was built for Kirby White, one of the leading principals of that company. And so it ties in with our history and our future to have historic homes preserved. And the Spicer House especially is a beautiful building, and truly needs to have some support given to it to make the changes that we need to make. It's also known as the Vagnosi Visitor Center after our first directly elected mayor, and it's an important place, and people do use it. It's the welcoming center for Heritage Park, and I know you guys have poured a lot of love and tender care into it so far, and I really appreciate what you've done to preserve these historic places in our city. Thank you.
For the acknowledgement.
No, thank you, and we couldn't be better served with our council liaison than by having Councilmember Valerie Knoll, who really appreciates this kind of work as well. So we're happy to be your partner. Thank
This will
you.
be a good year to elaborate on the historic aspect of the city
Yes,
of Farmington Hills.
yes,
So we could probably do a lot of work to that end.
I hope so.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Next item on the agenda is the report on the independent legal review for the police training, police department training. Welcome home from places out east.
Yes, thank you.
Nice to see you tonight.
Good to see you as well. Let me get set up here. Okay. All right. Well, I don't think I need to reintroduce myself. You all hired me to do an independent legal review of the situational awareness targets that are being currently utilized by the police department. So I want to just provide a brief summary and overview of my research and of the analysis and the review that I conducted. So just a level set, I'm sure that you all recall that in June of last year, a news report aired on a local TV station about the department's purported utilization of training targets that only depicted Black men. And the report was based on information that an attorney indicated she received from the family of a Cub Scout troop member who had toured the department's shooting range 2 days prior to the airing of the news report. And according to this attorney, paper targets of Black men were hanging on the gun range in plain sight during this scheduled tour. So I have inserted some pictures, or those pictures that appeared on the news report back in June. And as a result of the airing of this news story, there were a lot of questions and concerns, quite naturally, that arose as to the department's use of images of Black men for what was characterized as target practice. So there also were some questions, also some concerns about potential bias just throughout the police department. So the first thing that I reviewed when conducting this legal analysis was the department's participation in what's called the Michigan Law Enforcement Accreditation Program. And this is relevant to the department's use of situational targets because it's a way for law enforcement agencies to voluntarily identify and improve their processes, their procedures, and their overall performances. Law enforcement agencies that voluntarily decide to participate in this program become accredited if they can demonstrate that the implementation of their policies and procedures are conceptually sound and operationally effective. The Farmington Hills Police Department is one of 53 Michigan law enforcement agencies that have participated in this program and subsequently received accreditation, first in 2018 and then most recently in 2021, August of 2021. I think it's also important to highlight the fact that during the accreditation process that the department goes through, it was determined that the Farmington Hills Police Department consistently conducted an internal affairs investigation after each use of force incident that may have been reported. And to the extent that such an incident resulted in serious injury or death, the chief of police or his designee suspended applicable officers from active duty with pay pending the results of the investigation and or the review of the event in question. It was also noted that the city had a written policy that included a list of all the annual training that police officers were required to participate in, training such as use of force, also de-escalation techniques, and cultural diversity, just to name a few. Now, this does not mean that there were absolutely no deficiencies noted by this program or by this agency. But to the extent there were deficiencies noted in 2018 and 2021, corrective remedies were recommended and they were seemingly carried out based on my review. So in addition to the city's accreditation by the Michigan Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, the police department also complies with the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards, or MCOLS for short. MCOLS is an agency that has legislatively been mandated to carry out two statutory duties, the first of which is to prepare and publish mandatory minimum recruitment, selection, and training standards for entry-level law enforcement officers, and that's throughout the state. And then secondly, to define the categories and classifications of the specific in-service training that is to be received by all Michigan law enforcement officers. So simply put, the standards that are developed by MCOLS establish the minimum level of competency in order to enhance officer and citizen safety. And these standards also represent what is expected of active law enforcement officers in the area of firearms competency. MCOLS has also concluded that scenario training or situational awareness training is an effective method to apply classroom studies to simulated situations. So what this means is that upon completion of the MCOLS training or simulation training, officers should be able to properly assess life-threatening situations, employ sound tactics during a response to a life-threatening situation, and appropriately discharge a firearm in a life-threatening situation. The Farmington Hills Police Department utilizes these MCOLS approved simulated training modules. In addition to developing training modules, MCOLS has also approved the utilization of certain targets doing situational or simulated training exercises. And some of these targets are depictions of individuals on large pieces of paper sheets. And the individuals depicted on these large paper sheets are representative of all different races and genders. Some of the targets are designed to be non-threatening or non-threats via the placement of either a cell phone or like a beer can in the individual's hand, while others are actually holding weapons. It was these targets, and you can see them in the middle here of this screen or of this slide, that were left hanging in the city's shooting range the day the Cub Scout troop toured the facility. What was also revealed during my review was the fact that there was a total of 15 targets utilized on the day in question, but they were not solely pictures of Black men. In fact, one of the city's lieutenants spoke to the Cub Scout leader at some point after the tour, and the leader indicated that there were several targets still hanging on the shooting range when the troop arrived, and they included both white and Black males. So the bottom line is those targets should have been removed from the shooting range at the conclusion of the training, but they weren't. There is a directive that had been given to all officers prior to this whole incident that that's what they were supposed to do. But for whatever reason, it did not happen that day. I want to switch gears just for a minute and talk briefly about something called deliberate indifference. And this is a legal standard that applies in this particular situation. It was developed from a series of cases that analyzed and ultimately answered the following question. And that is, under what circumstances can inadequate training be legally actionable? And the answer is when and if it can be shown that there has been a violation of an individual's civil rights, and that violation is coupled with evidence of a municipality's failure to train its officers to handle certain recurring situations. For example, if and when a city arms its officers with firearms and then fails to train them on the use of deadly force, deliberate indifference of the constitutional rights of a municipality's citizens may be established. Other courts have more specifically determined that evidence of firearms training that does not include real-world conditions, or in other words, is devoid of situational type training, may also result in a finding of deliberate indifference. So what does this all mean for the city going forward? And are there lessons to be learned from this particular incident? And the answer is absolutely yes. There are lessons to be learned. I do want to reiterate, first and foremost, that the use of these situational targets that were left hanging in the shooting range or on the shooting range that particular day, they are not per se illegal. And in light of the deliberate indifference standard, the use of these types of situational targets may in fact help to insulate the city from potential liability. So what that means is the training that the police department is providing and the use of situational training targets more specifically, is essentially a best practice, if you will. It's a practice that is designed to equip officers with the tools necessary to properly identify dangerous situations when they are out in the field. It's also important to note that despite the legality of the use of these targets, there are still opportunities for the city to improve with respect to its training practices, particularly as it pertains to how and for what purpose situational targets are utilized. And what I mean by that is the department should use these targets more effectively to identify and subsequently mete out implicit bias. Now, it's my understanding that the department has the capability to track how often an officer shoots at certain targets during training. And as it's been explained to me, the department has for several years had an employee performance management system in place that monitors officers' performance, which includes an early warning intervention system that aids in identifying any concerning or inappropriate conduct, which includes unconscious bias. I think this is all great. It's a great first step, but there's still an opportunity to ensure that there is an ongoing, consistent, focused analysis of an officer's response or reaction to targets that depict individuals of different races or genders, so that any bias that may be present can be immediately detected. I would also be remiss if I didn't address the perception issue as a result of this incident, meaning that there is now this perception in the community that officers or the police department as a whole is biased. And as we all know, perception is reality, so this must be dealt with. The city should take this opportunity to engage with citizens to help rebuild and solidify that trust. It's my understanding that the city recently hired a new director of communications and community engagement who may be able to help in this regard. I've also been informed that this individual is currently working with the police department to develop a regular series of ongoing community engagement opportunities to address this perception issue regarding purported police bias. Again, this is another excellent first step, keeping in mind that this is going to be a process. It's going to be an ongoing process. It's also recommended that the department establish a policy that ensures the removal of all targets at the conclusion of every internal firearms training from henceforth. The police chief, I believe, has already put the wheels in motion in that regard. And the last thing I will say is that the department should develop and subsequently mandate that all officers participate in agency-wide racial sensitivity training in the coming months. The issue or the topic of unconscious bias should definitely be incorporated in this training so we can ensure that all officers understand what biases are, as well as how those biases may show up during performance of their duties. I was recently informed that officers have already undergone a type of sensitivity training, and unconscious bias is something that is going to be incorporated in the city's overall DEI plan. Again, all of these things, wonderful beginnings. We just need to remain vigilant and track our progress, really, in all of these recommended areas to ensure that we are holding ourselves accountable and we don't find ourselves in a position like the one that happened in June ever again. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and I will answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions? No questions? Comments?
A comment just to say that we appreciate your presentation today, and thank you for your work. And also, we chatted earlier about we have a commonality between our two children that are involved in orthopedic surgery work. So I wanted to also mention that, but thank you for your work today. I appreciate it. And I'm sure the city is be responsive to what your recommendations are, and they are being responsive to your recommendation. And training is an ongoing process. Farmington Hills Police Department does value training. I know in my years on council, that's what I admire about our city, that we do have ongoing training. We look at national events that occur across the country and incorporate those situations locally in our police department. So thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? I also want to thank you. You've done a tremendous job. Nobody's perfect, and even though we're doing really well, there are always opportunities to improve, and I thank you for highlighting those. And we now have a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer on staff. So we're moving ahead with that, and we want everybody in this community not only to feel welcome, but to feel part of the community that they live in, and to genuinely feel appreciated by the administration and the staff of this community, which is why we're one of the safest cities in the state of Michigan. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you. Come out of this.
Okay, that moves us on to correspondence. Does anybody have any correspondence? I received the appropriate number. No, I did not. I received way too few, but very angry people with the power outage. And the fact that it is lingering and it's still going on. I know we can't control the weather, but DTE certainly can be doing a much better job of upgrading the transformers that blew out way too quickly in our community. The ones that were blowing were not the new ones that were upgraded. They're the old ones that still need to be upgraded. And the fact that DTE is now asking for a rate increase when they haven't addressed the problems in the communities that they currently serve is very disturbing. And we will stay on top of this, and just wanted people to know that if you are still experiencing an outage, we do have a connection to DTE, so if you would call the city manager's office at 248-871-2500, we will make sure that we log that call in and make sure that we get that over to our contact at DTE so that they can reach out and discuss with you the very problem that you're calling about. Again, city manager's office number is 248-871-2500. And you'll probably reach Danielle, and she is a very nice lady, so treat her with respect. Yes.
May I comment, Mayor?
Yes.
Your comments. Yeah, I've heard the same thing regarding several residents complaining about the power outage. I've talked to City Manager Mexion about it as well. And, you know, the rate increase you spoke about, the MPSC made a decision. They declined their rate increase.
They're going back again.
Yeah, going back again. But a large part of the rate increase was for infrastructure and plant equipment investments. And I'm hoping that the MPSC and legislature can come together to tie any rate increase to reliability improvement in their system. No question about that. So,
And I can figure out where they can save a few $1 million right now. They're paying their board of directors over $780,000 a year. They have high staff people that are earning upwards of $5 million plus a year. And without hurting the bottom line of returns to shareholders, who tend to be disproportionately elderly folks that invest in utilities, they can shave several $1 million from their budget right now and turn that into proactive upgrades in Southeast Michigan. So that is my suggestion. And many of us who have served on boards and commissions know that you very rarely get paid. I know this is the corporate world, but come on, folks. There's no reason why the boards of directors of DTE, which is a major company causing problems for our residents and our business community, should be pulling down almost over $750,000 a year each for the kind of advice that they're giving as a board member to DTE. So that is my piece, and we will move on now. Let's move on to the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine, administrative, or non-controversial by the City Council and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the items may be removed from the consent agenda for consideration. And I will now turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Randy Bruce to read the rather long Consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 6, recommended approval of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, interlocal agreement with Oakland County, CMR 22323. Number 7, recommended approval of agreement with Michigan Department of Transportation, MDOT, for the pavement rehabilitation project on 14 Mile Road between Drake Road and Farmington Road, CMR 22324. Number 8, recommended approval of agreement with Michigan Department of Transportation, MDOT, for the Farmington Road construction project from 12 Mile Road to 13 Mile Road, CMR 22325. Number 9, recommended adoption of a resolution establishing the Salvador Street, Whitlock to Hugo, Water Main Payback District, and final payback costs, CMR 22326. Number 10, recommended adoption of a resolution establishing the Salvador Street, Whitlock to Hugo Sanitary Sewer Payback District and final payback costs, CMR 22327. Number 11, recommended adoption of a resolution establishing the Normandy Hills Water Main Payback District and final payback costs, CMR 22328. Number 12, recommended adoption of a resolution establishing the Quaker Valley Farms Addition Water Main Payback District and final payback costs, CMR 22329. Number 13, recommended approval of award of contract for the Heritage Hills and Wedgewood Commons Subdivision Road Reconstruction Project Phase 3 to Fonson Company Incorporated in the amount of $3,762,982.56, CMR 22330. Number 14, recommended approval of award of bid for utility cart with plow to Carlton Equipment Company Incorporated in the amount of $28,741.21, CMR 22331. Number 15, recommended approval of award of purchase of turnout boots to McQueen Emergency LLC in the total amount of $76,680 with possible extensions, CMR 22332. Number 16, recommended approval of award of contract for the Farmington Freeway Industrial Park Phase 2, Research Drive and Freeway Park Drive Reconstruction Project to Hard Rock Concrete Incorporated in the amount of $3,977,338.61. And let's see. Number 17, recommended approval of award of agreement for repair and restoration of the stone wall at Longacre Heritage Park to National Restoration Incorporated in the amount of $132,970.61, CMR 22334. Number 18, recommended approval of City Council study session meeting minutes of February 13th, 2023. And number 19, recommended approval of City Council regular session meeting minutes of February 13th, 2023.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Massey.
Madam Mayor, I would move approval of the consent agenda items 6 through 17 as read by the Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved by Dr. Massey, seconded by Councilmember Newland. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Council members Newland,
Yes.
Massey,
Yes.
Knoll,
Yes.
Bridges,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
and Mayor Barnett.
Yes, it passes 6-0 with one absence.
I'll make a motion
Okay.
oh, you ready for a motion?
Yes, I am.
I will make a motion to approve items 18 and 19 as read by the Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Knowles, seconded by Councilmember Bridges. Any discussion? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote.
Council members Massey,
Yes.
Knoll,
Yes.
Bridges,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes, abstain, sorry.
Newland,
Yes.
and Mayor Barnett.
Abstain.
Thank you.
Next item brings us to public questions and comments. I would first like to call up we have been split into pieces here in Farmington Hills. We have two state senators. One is Mary Kavanaugh, who you met a few weeks ago. The other is returning state Senator Rosemary Bear, and we're glad to see you.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here with you all today. And isn't it great that you have two senators for the same price? It's amazing.
I know.
Happy to work with Senator Mary Kavanaugh, and you also have a number of House representatives that are, because of the new district lines, we have more interest from more legislators, which can only help the community. So, and in fact, we had a coffee hour on Saturday representing Farmington Hills, and all five of us were at the coffee hour. We had a very crowded coffee shop, and look forward to doing as much work together as we can, but we're all also available all the time to all of you, to the entire community. So excited about that. We have hit the ground running. It's been 6 weeks. We have already shattered records all over the place. We've introduced and passed more legislation in the first 6 weeks than the last 6 sessions or the last 12 years in the Michigan legislature. We are rocking and rolling and doing all the things that we promised the people we would do. It's very exciting, and including repealing the retirement tax, which was a promise made, we've already passed, already signed into law, and that's not just for people who work for the government or people who work for the education system. It's for anybody with an IRA or a 401k. So it's rolling back something that happened in a previous administration. So we're excited about that. 500,000 families will benefit by that every year, and we're rolled up the earned income tax credit for working families. So 700,000 working families in Michigan will save about $3,200 a year in taxes. And that money goes right into food and rent and all the things they critically need. So we are very proud of that. Tomorrow, we're going to vote on civil rights, equal rights for everyone in our state, including LGBTQ people, changing the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. We're thrilled with that, long overdue. Of course, all our people deserve all the rights. And the week after, we're going to vote on another promise through all of our campaigns. The #1 issue was making sure that we allowed reproductive freedoms and people to make their own choices. So we're repealing the old language that's still stuck there on our books from 1931 to make sure we protect women and families' rights to make their own healthcare decisions. And then sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we are also going to vote to make our communities safer with the first 3 packages of legislation directed toward firearm safety. And we're really excited about that. Been working on it for years, and finally be able to move that forward in Michigan. It will help our kids. It will help people who are at risk to themselves, all kinds of people around the state, and we're thrilled to be able to get that going too. And lots more happening. I want to open it to questions, but I want to first say that if you want to reach me, I am equally angry about DTE. I think every legislator is right now. And we want to hold them accountable. You will see a number of hearings going on. We are able to also help. If you need our office to help you with DTE, we've got a pretty direct connection as well. But for anything, we helped about 5,000 people during COVID with unemployment challenges. So if you need help from our office, the number is 517-373-2417. We are always willing to help you with whatever you need to do. And if you are interested, I had 4 coffee hours this week in different parts of my district. If you want to keep up with the things that are happening and join us whenever possible, you can go to the website. It's Senator Bayer, B-A-Y-E-R, senatorbayer.com, and scroll down and sign up for our email list. We don't send them that often. We won't bury you in junk mail. We just send out things that are news every couple of weeks. And so you can come and join us and have coffee and all the other things that we're doing around the community. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm absolutely loving Farmington. Farmington Hills is just marvelous. I can't tell you how many times I've already been at the Hawk. My husband signed up for programs. We're all in.
Well, we're glad to have you here. I know that Mayor Pro Tem Bruce has a question or two.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Senator Bayer, for being here. Really appreciate it. I have 2 things I'm very concerned about. Number one, about 3 years ago, the state passed the auto no-fault reform, which did nothing but put a number of providers out of business, discharged hundreds of clients out of their programs because programs had to close, including one that I ran, for really no reason, because the insurance companies continue to make record profits. Insurance rates really didn't drop for a lot of people, and in fact, they're going back up again because of the language that was in that very poorly drafted bill that was drafted by the insurance companies and rammed through the legislature in the middle of the night. So I'm wondering what your position is on that in terms of really going back to that law and I think fixing a lot of things in there, including keeping out new businesses, because now with the CARF requirement in that law, you can't start a new rehabilitation business in the state unless you're CARF certified, but you can't get CARF certification unless you've been in business for at least 2 or 3 years. So it excludes any new rehabilitation-based businesses
And
that
many of
serve
the
auto no
existing
fault
ones are
clients.
gone now, right? Yes.
I'm sorry, yeah,
Many
so
of the
it's,
former ones had to go out of
yeah,
business.
like mine. So it's a horrible bill, and it has done a lot of harm to a lot of clients in the state. The other one is, back in the 80s and 90s, this state closed down almost all the state hospital facilities and dumped out everybody into the street, and for some sort of idea of cost savings, which never materialized because we had to spend so much more money putting people in short-term private beds in the hospitals rather than in the established state hospital system that I used to be a part of as well. And people wait in ERs for days or weeks. The children's psychiatric facilities in the state are almost nil. And again, they have to wait in ERs days or weeks before they can find a bed. If you're lucky to find a bed, people are in there for maybe 2 or 3 days and they're discharged, rather than the long-term care that they used to get in the state hospital system, which, while it wasn't perfect, it wasn't as bad as it was made out to be. But we dismantled everything. We threw the baby out with the bathwater on that. And now we talk all kinds of things about, all the things challenging mental health in this state and all the issues around guns and mental health, but yet we have very few treatment facilities left for people with mental illness, especially long-term chronic mental illness. Yeah. So I would like to see that addressed, including maybe restarting the state mental health system again, building new psychiatric hospitals, state-funded psychiatric hospitals. The private beds, there's not enough. The hospital systems, it just doesn't pay for them to add these psychiatric beds most times. So I think the state really needs to do something about both of those issues, and I'd be really curious to see what your position is on those.
Sure. Well, the first one on the insurance, I think I was loud enough and obnoxious about it enough that I am now on the insurance committee.
Great.
We absolutely are going to work on this. We have promised many people that we've talked to over the last 4 years that what a disaster that has been for so many. And so we know we need to fix it, and we will.
Great.
Yeah. On the second issue, it's actually one of the reasons that I ran for office the first time, was to work on mental health, because of so many instances in my life, in your life, in everyone's life, where people near us have desperately needed something that it's just not available here. And as a legislator, as a person who cares about the people that she represents, I could not believe how many times someone would call. There were multiple things that would show up. Some of them were people who were afraid in their houses because of their family member. Many of them were parents who had children who needed help, and there was no place to go. And they would send their kids to Georgia, or they'd send them to Tennessee, or they'd send them to other states that actually have services. But then they're there by themselves, and there's no, just nothing about that works. So we already have, last year, we allocated $380 million for a brand-new state psychiatric hospital, which will be in Southeast Michigan. The site is not decided yet, but somewhere not too far from us, we know that.
But doesn't include the new addition to Henry Ford Healthcare System?
Correct.
Okay.
We are also helping hospital systems around the state to expand psychiatric beds. We're also now offering student loan paybacks for people who will get mental health certifications for social workers. So we are trying to build a whole program for schools, for teachers and students, so that they can get help within the school environment. But we don't have anywhere near enough qualified people to do all the things that we know we need to do. So at the same time, where we're building up some infrastructure, we're trying to build up the structure of people that we need to fill in all those spaces. We did actually get, I was actually one of the things I worked on in the last couple of years, another crisis center with short-term beds. I think it's up to 12 days in Oakland County, at the county center there by Common Ground.
Okay, great.
The OCHN, the Oakland Community Health Network. So slowly we're putting pieces back together. It's going to take some time because it is so expensive. So $400 million for one new hospital is not a small amount of money, but we know we need to do it.
Right. We have a big budget surplus in the state. And the last time study I saw was that we have between well over, I think it was 6,000 beds short in the state for psychiatric beds.
Yeah.
I mean, 6,000 beds, and that's an amazing shortfall. And as a clinical psychologist, neuropsychologist who It used to be, try to get people hospitalized from time to time. It was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. So.
It's actually worse than you think, because
Oh,
it's 6,000
hard to do.
short. We actually have like 1,200 of those beds available, but there's not enough people to support them.
Right.
So we actually have beds that are closed, unavailable, even though they have a location. So that's why we have to do both things at the same time to make sure that we are building up all sides of the puzzle. But we have, again, the governor proposed, I think it is over $300 million again this year for infrastructure for mental health. And one of the things we've just started really in the legislature is working on the actual budget for next year. So she gave us her proposal, and then we will be working on it over the next few months to get it done.
You know, and plus it's a huge cost to cities as well. You know, when you look at our weekly police report, the mental health section now that we added on years ago is very lengthy in terms of all the
'Cause they
mental
end up
health
owning
cases
that.
that our police department has to deal with, and our police and fire both. So it's a huge problem in every city, and so I'm looking forward to hopefully.
It's also exacerbated the problem with homelessness
Yes.
in, Veterans Affairs, and I mean, just all over the place.
COVID was really helpful.
What's it?
And COVID was really helpful for 3 years.
Yeah, it definitely caused some damage that we are going to be dealing with for a long time. Yeah. No, I think we're hearing it. I appreciate you talking about that. Those are really, really important things that we understand and are working on and will continue while we beat up DTE. I'm not all of DTE, not the workers. There he is.
Any other
Not the workers, just the company.
other questions? No. We would just like to ask you if there would be a time, we won't schedule that now, but think about a time we would like to have our representatives come in for study sessions so that we could have a more informal and lengthier conversation about our needs and how you can assist and what we can do to help you as well.
I would love that. That sounds
So
great.
we'll be sending out that kind of invitation rather soon.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one more time, 517-373-2417. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate it. Anybody else want to come up for public question and comment? Please make it brief, under 5 minutes. Hello, Mr. Alden.
Good evening, yes. Mayor, council members, yeah, my name's John Aldred. I'd actually like to follow up on the legal review that was given tonight by Miller Campfield on the situational awareness police training. I think one of the conclusions I heard this evening was that rather than it being a legal liability, it was actually a benefit in terms of the deliberate indifference that this kind of training was actually being performed. So that's a good thing, right? That was one of the legal findings. And I think in the review by Winborn Consulting back on the 23rd, I think it's fair to describe that review that was done as being a pretty clear exoneration of the training procedures that are in place and training policies of the police department. And what I heard then was that pretty much the only recommendation was that we have better communication of all the good work that our police department is actually doing. And the issue that was raised in June of last year was a pretty public questioning, I think, of our police department's training policies. And I think it would be appropriate for there to be an equally public communication of some of these findings. So I think it's not sufficient for it just to be in the minutes. So I would ask that there's consideration of how do we communicate this, whether it's from the council directly, some sort of public communication, or a press release of some form of what are these findings, because it was a pretty public questioning, and I think it would be appropriate. Taxpayers' money has gone into these third-party reviews to make these statements as well. And I know there's two other parts to the Winborn Consulting, which I know is a further $100,000 of taxpayer spend on our police procedures, on traffic arrests and also traffic stops and also arrests. That would be my request to council, is that there's some consideration of, there's a pretty clear commendation, exoneration of the training procedures that have been put in place. I don't think we should celebrate the good news. And like the recommendation even from legal this evening was more communication with the community would actually be better, help break down some of the suspicion and questioning based on what is not just the police department saying, hey, we're doing a great job. It's actually a third-party review saying, yeah, you're doing a great job.
Thank you very much. Well taken. So we have a staff member who we will probably put to work on that. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council, and to all of the people in this auditorium, to my police chief and my fire chief. If there's ever a time in which I feel that there is any discrimination, I am the first to be out there on the front lines. And I don't know how I feel right now because here we are again in the media for something that can be perceived real, but it can also be fake. So I'm familiar with the story where the same attorney that was caught up with the police issue is the same attorney caught up with this issue regarding my fire department. And it boils down to, is it really race? Or are we using the buzzwords to create a story? Is it really discrimination? Or is someone seeking a political appointment to the bench? Or does someone want to run for attorney general? I'm upset about the fact that allegations would be made which can harm the reputation of our fire chief regarding an African-American firefighter here. So anytime I hear something like this in the media, I do my homework. I do know that we have one black female firefighter, and my chief can correct me if I'm wrong, and we also have 8 male African-American firefighters. I used to have a talk show that came on in all of Genesee County, Oakland County, and parts of Wayne, and I remembered interviewing firefighter personnel to be told that that is one of the hardest jobs to have because of the training, the heavy equipment that's required, and it takes a certain mental mindset to be a police and to be a firefighter. These are jobs that kids dreamed about, but because of all the bad cops, I haven't heard of any bad firefighters, that these jobs are no longer jobs that our kids grow up to aspire to be. So what is this turning into? Is this really a race issue, or can we say it's an issue regarding an employee problem? I'm really sad. What I do want to say to the people that are trying to use this for their benefit, don't come to Farmington Hills and act like an ambulance chaser. I'm hoping that these issues don't constantly come up because someone wants a job, an appointment, or some media coverage to help them with their political aspirations. Stop using this because you make it an issue where people don't want to pay attention when it's really race. I'm really upset about this. I'm really upset about this. It's the same attorney. How does this same attorney find out about these issues in my city? Do we have a communications person that goes and calls this same attorney every time there's a perceived problem? What is it? We talk about how we want the police to be better to the residents, But we need to say to the residents, we need to be better to ourselves. You can't have these expectations of the police and then you hate your fellow neighbor due to race or gender or something else. We have got to stop this. I don't want my city to become a city of political buzzwords and just every other issue, it's about race. If you got a problem before you go to someone trying to have political aspirations or to get a seat on the bench, go to the appropriate person. Give that person respect, like one of our chiefs, to talk about it.
I have to cut you off now because it's over 5 minutes.
Okay.
But I appreciate what you're saying, that.
I didn't mean to go over, but
No,
I'm a little upset.
It's fine. That not everything that happens in our departments is based on race.
Exactly.
And sometimes there is this perception, and you're right, it is the same attorney.
I do my homework, Mayor
Yes.
Barnett.
And we are doing our level best, as is our police chief and our fire chief and all of our police officers and firefighters, to put their best foot forward all the time for every single resident in this community. And you are right in pointing that out, and we gratefully appreciate your comments on this.
Well, if I could say one other thing to you, Madam Mayor, you know, it's something that I'm
You've got 5
passionate.
seconds, hurry.
It's something that I'm passionate about because I listen to a radio station that has a lot of talk show hosts, and you've got a group of people that will call in and constantly say, this person should be appointed to a judicial bench seat. So that tells me that this is some kind of campaign to get this person on the bench, and that's what I'm so appalled with. Don't use the issue of race and discrimination for your political and judicial aspirations.
Thank
And
you.
I hope you're hearing me.
I think that the attorney that spoke when giving the report about our police department sensitivity and bias training was very clear that the report that there were only African-American targets up was false. There were other targets up as well. And so the way the attorney for the scouts that visited portrayed this was incorrect, false, and led to an overblown issue in a city with a department that didn't deserve that kind of attention. Right. So, thank you. Anybody else for public questions and comments? Seeing no one, we will move on to council member comments and announcements. None? Okay. Oh, I have one. I forgot. The State of the City address.
Yes, yes.
The State of the City's address will be at the Hawk on March 8th at late in the morning hour of 8 a.m. Am I excited? Okay. So that's where we are with that. So if you're interested in coming, there is a charge because it's sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, but it will be televised, right? And then rerun through our city system, so you don't have to pay. But if you'd like to come, we would love to have you. Also want to report that there is a new chair for the Farmington Community Library. Ernie McClellan was voted in as chair of the Farmington Community Library Board, and we want to wish him all the best. The library board has been doing excellent work, and in no small measure to Ernie's contribution. So thank you all for that. And next is city manager update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a result of the ice storm last week, not only did we have a number of power outages in the city that DTE continues to work on, we also had a lot of tree limbs come down throughout the city. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to review our yard waste pickup during the winter months. As you know, winter yard collection, yard waste pickup is suspended through the winter months. Unfortunately, as part of this storm, we had a lot of debris come down, and we are kindly asking our residents to please hold on to that yard waste until the yard waste pickup resumes. It's in April, it starts April 3rd this year, so it's a week earlier. So if they could kindly hang on to their debris for that 5-week period, it would be very much appreciated. It would save the city and its taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars to not have an additional pickup. If there are questions as to how to prepare your yard waste pickup, those requirements can be found on the city's website under the Department of Public Services. I'll just summarize real quickly here for the public. They must be less than 6 inches in diameter. They must be tied in bundles that are less than 4 feet long and weigh less than 60 pounds, or placed into a trash can up to a 35-gallon size limit and labeled with the yard waste stickers that are available at our Department of Public Works and our Public Services Department. You can see the lovely Barb Smirtka for a sticker. Unbundled brush and large limbs are not accepted. I also want to remind the public that the city does not dispose of trees or large limbs that are a result of trees located on private property. So if you've had a tree that's come down in your backyard on private property, you are going to end up having to utilize a private contractor to remove that tree. Just a note of caution, when you get an estimate from that private service provider, that tree service, make sure that estimate includes disposal of the wood. The public services nor the private contractor that picks up the yard waste is capable or will be able to pick up large pieces that exceed the size in our policy. Our Public Works Division will be removing limbs and street trees that have fallen within the influence of the public roads. We have many of those around town. If anybody sees those, they can certainly contact the Department of Public Services or the city manager's office. And I think I'd like to point out one major difference between this storm and perhaps the storms where we had a lot of damage a couple of summers ago in the summer of 21. I'd like to refresh everybody's memory, there was a state of emergency declared in that summer of 21, which really unlocked the ability for the city to reimburse itself for those additional crews, the mutual aid that was brought in from other communities to help collect up and haul away that debris. So that's a big difference between what happened last Wednesday and the summer of 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. And now that brings us to new business. Consideration of approval of the introduction of an ordinance to amend the Farmington Hills Code of Ordinances, Chapter 33. This was an exciting read, people. You should make sure you download it and read all of it. Water and sewers, to add Division 2 Stormwater Engineering Design Standards to Article 9 Stormwater Management, and to adopt and enact an engineering design standard developed by the Oakland County Water Resource Commissioner's Office, CMR 2-23-22.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We find that information to be
very
very interesting, and we live for it.
I know you do.
As a requirement of the Federal Clean Water Act, the city operates its stormwater management system under a permit from the state of Michigan and the U.S. EPA. This permit requires that the city do what it can to mitigate potential sources of pollution to rivers, lakes, and streams. One of the permit requirements is to provide a regulatory mechanism to address stormwater runoff from private and public developments. So recent changes to the state's rules require that the city now make updates to the existing engineering design standards. In order to ensure consistency in the application of these rules throughout the development community, the counties of Wayne, Macomb, Oakland, and Livingston joined together to jointly update those standards and negotiate the terms and conditions with the state. This effort occurred over a period of several years with over 40 regional meetings to meet and refine these rules. In late 2021, the Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner's Office finalized their standards. And since that time, city staff has been working with the city attorney's office and the state of Michigan to draft an acceptable ordinance
to adopt these new county standards. These rules will apply to any development in the city with a construction area equal to or larger than 1 acre. Now, it does not apply to single-family residential homes that are not part of a new subdivision. These rules address items such as improved water quality and stream channel protection. They include updated climate statistics and will ensure flood control for large storm events. Adoption of this ordinance will satisfy the state's requirements and ensure continued compliance with the Clean Water Act. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
Only just one real quick one. You didn't use the word forebay, and I learned something new.
Forebay, yeah, forebay. Yeah, a smaller forebay, larger forebay. Right.
Yes.
Well, now you have to explain what it is, now that you brought it up.
No, that's okay. It was obviously part of the study session.
That was part of the study session.
It's basically, it's a detention pond that has, instead of one big detention pond, it's basically 2 ponds. So the water enters the first pond and it's smaller, and that's the pond where basically a lot of the sediment falls, so that then by the time the water enters the next pond, it's cleaner.
And it's before
That's what it is.
It goes into the, into the storm system, yes.
Yeah.
So it helps eliminate some of the non-source, non-point source pollution that we are under contract with the Rouge River Authority to make sure doesn't get into the waterways. And I noticed none of this had to do with private lots that have creeks running through them.
Right.
Which is going to be another major problem that we will have to address. So, yeah, it was, yeah, you know, I'm not an engineer, but
Close.
there's a reason why I didn't go into engineering. This was it. Yes, who has a motion? Mr. Bridges.
Madam Mayor, I move the approval of the introduction of an ordinance to amend the Farmington Hills Code of Ordinances, Chapter 33, Water and Sewers, to add Division 2, Stormwater Engineering Design Standards to Article 9, Stormwater Management, to adopt and enact engineering design standards developed by the Oakland County Water Resource Commissioner's Office.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Bridges, supported by Councilmember Knoll. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmembers Knoll,
Yes.
Bridges,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
Newland,
Yes.
Massey,
Yes.
and Mayor Barnett.
Yes, and so I'm assuming that at our next meeting, the enactment will be coming up. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Very exciting stuff. And that brings us to the closed session that we need to have a motion for. Yes, Dr. Bruce.
I would move to enter into a closed session pursuant to subsections 8E and 8H of the Michigan Open Meetings Act for purposes of discussing and consulting with the city's attorney regarding a privileged attorney-client legal correspondence and the pending court case of Greenfield versus Farmington Hills, Oakland Circuit Court Case Number 2018-169707-CZ, and Michigan Court of Appeals Case Number 357579, because an open meeting discussion of such matters would have a detrimental financial effect on the litigating position of the city in that case.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Bruce, seconded by Council Member Dr. Massey, and this is just a regular vote, roll call vote to go into closed session.
Councilmembers Bridges,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
Newland,
Yes.
Massey,
Yes.
Knoll,
Yes.
and Mayor Barnett.
Yes, now we will be in closed session. When we return from closed session, we may have some public business to do. So when we get through with closed session, we will come back and reconvene the open meeting, okay? So just so that you know that, I will now declare the council session closed, which means everybody in the audience can stay in the building, but you just can't stay here. Welcome back to the regular meeting of the Farmington Hills City Council on February 27th. We're back into general session after being in closed session for reasons we discussed prior to going into closed session. So now that we're back open, the next thing on the agenda is adjournment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Dr. Bruce and seconded by Dr. Massey that we adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes 6-0 with one absence. Good night, Farmington Hills.